Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis and the most comprehensive coverage of the Hindu on YouTube. So let's start our discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen around 8 topics, and there are 3 articles today I'm selecting from PIB. Couple of articles are reported in Hindu as well, but the articles don't provide much information. There are related articles in PIB which gives us more additional information on these topics. And there is one exclusive article from the PIB which I feel can be very important for the prelims exam. So let's cover all these topics comprehensively so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. But before we start, I have a couple of very important announcements. Those of you who are preparing for 2027 and beyond, you can enroll for our Elevate batch, a new batch for UPSC aspirants, which has started from 1st June. Daily 2 classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, giving enough flexibility for you to cover multiple GS subjects at the same time and gives you enough time to focus on your revision and practice tests. So this would be a great time to join as Unacademy is providing the subscription at just 19,999 along with up to 6 months of free extension. So this will give you access to the live and recorded lectures, along with the study material, the test series, and mentorship sessions. So those interested, please check out the link provided in the description. Now on the subscription page, you might see a different fee. So to avail the discount, you have to enter the code IAS English. And I'm told that this is a limited period offer. Then those of you who are preparing for the upcoming mains exam, those who need support to cover mains static concepts, current affairs, and focus on answer writing, we are presenting Conquer Mains 2026, a comprehensive program designed to help you over the next 3 months. So under Conquer Mains, you will get access to classes by our top educators covering both the static portion for mains along with the current affairs. Plus, we will take up dedicated answer writing sessions along with evaluation, which is offered as part of the mains test series program. Then we also have toppers of the last year who will be conducting special sessions on answer writing. Plus, you will get access to all the notes for mains related topics, specifically internal security, disaster management, governance, etc. So if you're interested, enroll in Conquer Mains at just 9,999 and the link for the same is provided in the description box below. So let's get started and look at the first article. See, today's newspaper, I feel, is very interesting. It has a lot of insightful articles covering multiple subjects. And this is one such article. On page 14, this column related to environment and ecology helps us understand the topic of air pollution, especially in the summer months. Now, some of you might be a little shocked, little surprised. Generally, we talk about air pollution during the winter months, especially in northern parts of India, in the Delhi NCR belt, in the Indo-Gangetic plains. So how come we are talking about air pollution in the summer season? See, when you look at air pollution in India, there are 2 distinct phases where we suffer from air pollution, particularly in our cities. While winter air pollution is primarily dominated by the deadly smog conditions that develop because of some of the unique factors that are present in the Delhi NCR belt and the Indo-Gangetic plain. Compared to this, the summer pollution that we see across Indian cities, this is entirely different. Be it the type of pollutants, the sources which are contributing to it, they are completely different. So this article is urging the authorities to take appropriate action to combat air pollution, not just during the winter months, but even during the summer months as well. So let's go deep into this article. I'll take you beyond the article as well to cover this entire topic because especially from a mains and prelims point of view, this topic can be very, very useful. See, recently in Delhi, the Commission for Air Quality Management, the CAQM, which is responsible for taking harsh measures under the GRAP or Graded Response Action Plan, it has been given a legal mandate by the concerned law and by the Supreme Court as well to tackle air pollution in the Delhi NCR belt by restricting certain activities. But generally, it takes action in the winter months, particularly from December to February period. So by March, the restrictions that Commission for Air Quality Management had introduced under the Graded Response Action Plan, they had been withdrawn. As we entered the summer cycle, as pollution had relatively declined, all these restrictions under the GRAP had been withdrawn by the CAQM. But all of a sudden, these restrictions were brought back in April, and again, it was reimposed in the month of May. So over the last 60 days, we have seen these restrictive measures being brought back by Commission for Air Quality Management, especially in the Delhi NCR belt. So what's driving these policy changes? Why these restrictive measures are being introduced to combat pollution, which is primarily summer pollution? So this is where we need to understand the difference between winter air pollution and summer air pollution. Now, when you look at Delhi NCR belt, the Indo-Gangetic Plain, they have some unique geographical traits which make them vulnerable for extensive smog pollution during the winter months. For example, the temperatures are very low during the winter season in the northern, northwestern parts of India. Then the wind lacks the required speed to dissipate the pollutants, especially particulate matter and fine PM such as PM 2.5. So they all get accumulated, they start collecting at the ground level, they don't get dissipated, and the overall basin like topography of the region, accompanied with lack of rain, lack of wind, it compounds the problem. Plus, you have other contributing factors like stubble burning and heavy pollution from vehicles, industries, construction dust, which all piles up to create the deadly smog pollution during the winter season. So here the main pollutant and the main concern is about PM 2.5. But in the summer season, these factors, most of them at least disappear. The temperature will start increasing, the wind speed will pick up. There are periodic thunderstorms brought in by western disturbances as well. So this helps the pollutants to rise up, mix with the higher reaches of the atmosphere, to spread out and dissipate. That's what generally should be happening. But however, despite the rising temperature and the improved wind speed and some periodic thunderstorms, places like Delhi have been reporting alarming levels of pollution, especially PM10, particulate matter 10, and ozone, ground level ozone formation, has seen an uptick during the summer months. Now, this phenomena is being seen across Indian cities, even Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Chennai as well, where these two pollutants increase during the summer months. So we need to understand what factors are contributing to it and how summer pollution is different from winter air pollution. Now, since we know about winter air pollution, we discussed the root causes and the contributing factors. Let's see what drives the emission of PM10 and ground level ozone formation. Now, when you look at the different sources, right, we have high levels of PM10 being reported, not just because of vehicular emission, industrial activity, but you also have continuing burning of agricultural residue and urban waste, etc. More importantly, we have these construction sites, broken roads which are not fixed. They all introduce a lot of dust into the atmosphere. As construction activity continues unabated and summer brings in higher temperatures, making it more dry, and the loose soil, right, which can get easily removed and dislodged, it will dissipate as dust into the atmosphere and winds will pick it up, increasing the concentration of PM10 levels. So this is one of the serious concerns across Indian cities. So the broken roads, the rampant construction activity without proper regulation of the dust, along with vehicular emission, industrial emission, then burning of agricultural waste, urban waste, they all start contributing to large-scale emissions of particulate matter 10. But when it comes to ozone formation, see, ozone is not directly released as one of the outputs of combustion. Rather, it is catalyzed under the influence of sunlight and heat. For example, vehicular emission, which contributes NOx or nitrogen oxides, they catalyze under the impact of sunlight and heat to produce ground level ozone. Then you have industrial solvents, paint, volatile organic compounds, which also undergo catalyzation process under the influence of sunlight and heat to produce ground level ozone. And ground level ozone is extremely hazardous. It can lead to a number of respiratory conditions. See, PM10 may not be as dangerous as PM 2.5, as PM 2.5 can get lodged deep into your lung tissue. But PM10 also is quite hazardous, leading to a lot of respiratory illnesses, and ground level ozone will aggravate the risk factor. So when you look at these different sources of pollution, it's quite alarming to note that across Indian cities, we are seeing high levels of PM10 concentration and ozone formation in the summer months. According to the data, if you look at the National Ambient Air Quality Management data, in Delhi alone, out of the last 60 days, in 54 days, PM10 level was above the threshold. See, as per the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, PM10 level should be within 100 micrograms per cubic meter. So if you take the period from April 1st to May 31st, roughly 60 days period, 54 days registered higher levels of PM10 beyond the standards that are set, making it very dangerous and alarming. Then similar patterns have been seen in other cities as well, with very high levels of ozone concentration at the ground level. Now, apart from all these sources which are contributing to these emissions, you have few geographical factors as well, particularly the unique wind currents that are present during the summer months in northern parts of India. See, because of the rising temperatures, a low pressure area would have been created across the northern plains. And this extends all the way till Pakistan, Iran, and spreads across the Indian subcontinent. So in the surrounding high pressure areas, the wind gets pulled in, it gets attracted, picks up all the dust from the desert areas of West Asia, Rajasthan's Thar Desert, and brings a huge dust storm into the other parts of India, the interior parts of India. This is what we call the low wind current. The formation of a low pressure zone on the Indian subcontinent will drag in the winds from high pressure zones, which picks up all the dust from the deserts of West Asia, the Thar Desert, and brings this as a dust storm that can stretch even up to eastern India, going all the way till Bay of Bengal. We also have these localized dust storms known as Andi, which kicks up a localized dust storm that can introduce a lot of particulate matter into the atmosphere. For example, if you remember in 2018, the dust storms seen in Rajasthan, UP, it went viral on social media as well. They were triggered by a combination of the Lu winds along with localized Andi wind currents, triggering a massive dust storm, raising the prospect of serious air pollution. So how do we deal with these threats? There are some natural contributing factors as well, such as these dust storms and wind storms, over which we have very limited control. There are many anthropogenic sources as well, like vehicular emission, industrial activity, construction dust. So how do we contain this? What's the solution? See, for any challenge related to environment, disaster, the first thing you need is a good early warning system. The IMD already provides a national weather forecast, which gives us alerts about impending storms, including dust storms. Accompanied with that, we have the air quality early warning system implemented in the Delhi region, which is now being expanded to other cities as well, Jaipur, Mumbai. And there's a national air quality index framework, which can provide sufficient early warning alerts so citizens can take precautionary measures to avoid exposure. Governments and local authorities can initiate certain steps in order to contain the dust. For example, placing strict regulations at construction sites during summer months to prevent the dust from getting kicked up into the atmosphere. Or fixing the broken roads as vehicles keep moving, heavy vehicles, they keep releasing more and more dust. And today this has become one of the primary sources of air pollution in urban cities. And this challenge will keep on aggravating as we continue to face the impact of global warming and climate change. Rising temperatures create a more drier environment, and it becomes conducive for dry dust to get kicked up into the atmosphere. So ensuring that roads are properly asphalted and potholes are fixed, ensuring that vehicular emission standards are enforced, industrial emissions are curbed. These basic steps will go a long way to address summer air pollution. We also need strict regulations on the paint, solvent, and volatile organic compound industry, because it's the catalyzation of these chemicals which releases ground level ozone or leads to the formation of ground level ozone. So these regulatory steps are absolutely essential, or else continuing air pollution throughout the year will have a detrimental impact on human lives. Winter air pollution is already credited with very serious respiratory illnesses which can claim lakhs of lives in the country. And India today shares one of the highest burden of mortality rates because of air pollution. And continued air pollution will basically make pollution a omnipresent thing throughout the year, if you're exposed to such high levels of particulate matter and ozone, it will affect respiratory system, it will affect overall quality of life, and it could even significantly reduce the lifespan. So this is where urgent steps are needed. Urgent intervention is needed by the pollution control boards, by the Ministry of Environment, and all the other concerned stakeholders. So from an early warning system to proper regulation of human activities. We may not be able to control the dust storms and the low winds, but at least construction sites, broken roads can be fixed, vehicular emission, industrial emissions can be curbed, and other sources from where VOCs, paint, solvents are contributing to ozone formation, they can be regulated. So based on this, take up this mains question for your answer writing practice. I want all of you to write answers. This is the right time to begin your mains answer writing. Whether you're preparing for upcoming mains or next year, this time is a golden time for you. It's a golden window where you can focus on your answer writing. So since we focus heavily on concept-based discussion with the background, with additional points and facts, and we follow a structured discussion, I'm sure that will help you to write answers. That's why we don't give model answers readily. There's no point in just copy pasting an answer, right? Based on what we have discussed, what you have understood, try to practice your answer writing. Make it a daily habit, right? Today, take a commitment that every day I'll write at least 2 answers before going to bed from whatever I've studied. Maybe you can pick one question from our Hindu analysis, one from your GS subject that you have studied today, or maybe one from optional. At least 2-3 answers before you sleep. That will hardly take 15-20 minutes of your time. So next, we have a very interesting column on page number 6 related to the IMEC corridor, the significance of the IMEC corridor. See, the Iran war has exposed the geographical limitations of global supply chains. How Iran has placed a chokehold over Hormuz, and how US is unable to coerce Iran to lift the blockade. It has already crippled global energy supplies from oil to gas. And you know the kind of economic impact, the ripple effect it has had, especially on countries like India. Since India has a heavy dependency on crude imports, up to 90% of our requirement is met through crude oil imports. And we have a very crucial dependency on Hormuz to access the West Asian markets. So our import of energy has been affected. Our export of commodities also has been hit. So it's very crucial to bypass these choke points and conflict zones. And only through strategic connectivity projects can we overcome these hazards that disrupt our global supply chains and global economies. Now, for example, we have the INSTC corridor, International North-South Transport Corridor, designed as a link between India and Russia, passing via Iran, through Caspian Sea, through Central Asia, through Azerbaijan, connecting us with rest of Europe. This corridor is likely to help us to bypass the Suez Canal route, the Red Sea route, which is threatened by 2 main choke points, Bab el-Mandeb Strait near Horn of Africa and Suez Canal near Egypt. Whereas China's Belt and Road Initiative is largely conceptualized as a bypass over Malacca Strait. China can directly access Arabian Sea through China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It can directly access Bay of Bengal through China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. So these projects pursued under Belt and Road Initiative by China, it helps China and few of its close partners and allies to bypass the weakness at Malacca Strait, which is a choke point. Then similarly, the INSTC, though it has not seen much progress because of sanctions on Russia, sanctions on Iran, the ongoing conflict, but despite that, it will provide a bypass around Suez Canal and the Red Sea route and overcome choke points such as Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So in the same context, the proposed IMEC project under the G20, when India hosted the G20 summit in 2023, there was a mega announcement backed by the G7 countries through their Partnership for Growth, Investment and Infrastructure. The G7 countries are pushing the IMEC corridor with India, Middle East and European countries. The India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, designed as a resilient supply chain corridor that could bypass traditional choke points like Hormuz and as well as Bab el-Mandeb and Suez Canal. So when you look at the conceptualization of the project, it is designed to be a multimodal transport corridor, linking India with West Asia, mainly through a sea link. So before the Iran war broke out, before the Gaza war, before the October 7th attack, when things were looking normal. This route was a very viable route for India to link with strategic Emirati ports in UAE, such as Jebel Ali and Fujairah, from where goods could be transported through a road and rail network into Saudi Arabia, then into Jordan, from there into Israel and its strategic seaport of Haifa facing the Mediterranean. So from here, it would be connected with European ports like Piraeus in Greece, Italy, France, Spain, Germany, UK, all of them had shown a lot of interest in the IMEC project. So it had multiple segments, the eastern, central, and western segments. In Europe, you already have a well established transport network of road and rail linking almost all the European nations. So if European ports were linked with West Asian ports like Haifa, Jebel Ali, Fujairah, and further with India, this would have been a transformative project. But what's curious is that just roughly a month after IMEC was announced, that's when the first disruption happened in the region. It raises many conspiracy theories as well. Was there a direct connection? Because by September 2023, that's when at the G20, the IMEC project was announced. And within 3-4 weeks, we saw the deadly October 7th attack by Hamas that pulled Israel into this deadly war in Gaza, resulting in a wider confrontation between Israel and Iran, which leads us to the present Iran war. So the conflict of the past 3 years has completely neutralized the very purpose of this project. Even before it could start, even before it could be initiated, the project was basically completely derailed because of the conflict that broke out across West Asia. From Hormuz to Haifa, this entire route became unviable for a connectivity route or a connectivity project. And now with the Iran war, Iran placing a chokehold at Hormuz, accessing Emirati ports like Jebel Ali and Fujairah is out of the question. And this vulnerability will remain in the coming days as well. So this has raised concerns about the viability of the IMEC corridor. That's why this article provides an alternate solution. The writer says that since West Asian ports and routes are inaccessible, and this is the conflict zone today, there are alternate routes which can still be considered to at least realize a part of the IMEC corridor. See, when you look at the West Asia region, it's situated perfectly in between India and Europe. This project will not only include a mix of road and rail transport and maritime transport, it will also include digital data links, it will also include energy pipelines, green hydrogen corridors. So it's supposed to be a transformative project, from transporting energy to data to connecting submarine sea cables to linking up green hydrogen corridors. It would completely transform the energy market, the digital data market of the world, bringing India closer to Europe via West Asian countries. So now that this region is becoming unviable for the route, instead of letting the project die, instead of letting this idea die out, the writer is suggesting that why don't these countries work at least on the eastern and the western segment and rely on the Suez Canal route to realize at least a partial idea of the IMEC corridor. For example, Oman's strategic ports are largely unaffected by the blockade at Hormuz. Though Iran has targeted Omani ports like Salalah, Duqm, and Muscat, Oman has faced the lesser of the brunt compared to UAE. And since India Oman have fantastic relations, we can connect the route, at least in this segment, the eastern segment, using the strategic Omani ports of Duqm. By the way, Indian Navy already has access, port access to Duqm port, then Salalah port, and the port of Muscat. Now from Oman, through Bab el-Mandeb, through Red Sea corridor and Suez Canal, this route can be linked with the western segment of IMEC, which is the European segment. And by the way, Egypt already has the essential infrastructure ready. Around the Suez Canal, there are multiple modern ports that Egypt operates. there are industrial clusters, there are energy and supply centers located near Suez Canal, which can sustain such a transport and supply chain corridor. At least for the time being, unless and until the conflict ends and the region stabilizes, IMEC can still be realized by leveraging the eastern and the western flanks, where India Europe can be brought closer through the traditional Red Sea route via Suez Canal itself. Going forward, if things become better, right, then there is a possibility of considering the IMEC route via West Asian countries. See, right now, even European nations have shown a lot of interest in IMEC. During PM Modi's recent visit to 5 European countries, countries like Italy, which is a key part of IMEC project, even France, they've all shown a lot of interest to take forward the initiative. And other European nations, even Netherlands, Germany, are all very keen on executing the IMEC project. So, bypassing West Asia and the conflict zone without touching Hormuz and Haifa and this conflict hit area, you can still realize a partial vision of IMEC by relying on the traditional Red Sea route via Suez Canal if countries work on the eastern flank and the western flank. Linking India with Omani ports, then using Bab el Mandeb Red Sea route via Suez Canal to link up with European ports. This can still realize at least a partial vision that could bring some resilience to global supply chains. So that is the key suggestion that you can take away from this article. So this is your practice question based on what we have discussed. The war in Iran has underscored the need for transnational connectivity projects. The war highlights the need to bypass conflict zones, bypass choke points. The more resilience we create in global supply chains and trade and connectivity routes, it is better for the global economy. So, based on this statement, analyze the relevance of the IMEC project and how this vision can still be partially realized by bypassing the conflict zone via Hormuz. Next, we have a very important article related to space warfare, particularly the space warfare ambitions of China, what threat it poses to outer space activities and especially to India's space assets. See, recently, China has been stepping up its space weapon capabilities. It has been scaling up its space based weapon assets, furthering research and technological development in the space domain. Because, see, outer space has been the fourth dimension of warfare. Traditionally, land, sea, and air were the three dimensions of warfare. Since 1950s, as space technology evolved and the space race began during the Cold War between US and Soviet Union, since then outer space has become a part of this arms race. It has become a weaponized domain where warfare has been extended with few countries developing anti-satellite weapon capabilities. Today, there are only 4 countries in the world with proven anti-satellite weapon systems: United States, Russia, China, and India also has joined the ranks recently. But India's capabilities are still very premature. It's still developing. China is fast accelerating its anti-satellite weapon systems, and space warfare doctrine is being evolved as it is in competition with United States. So the growing space rivalries and the development of space weapons creates a big strategic challenge and a security threat for India, as China could probably cripple Indian space assets in the context of a conflict or tensions. In today's world, before the actual war can begin, any major adversary will try to target your space assets in order to cripple your critical infrastructure, be it your military command communication centers, your radar sites, air defense systems, your banking and financial networks, or your ISR capabilities, your intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities. We already saw that in the Iran war. US and Israel, before the first shots were fired on 28th Feb, whatever capabilities Iran had, much of it was largely crippled, either by taking out and knocking out some of the satellite capabilities and by launching cyber warfare campaigns as well. Cyberspace has emerged as the fifth dimension of warfare. So these two domains, they are indispensable in today's conflict. So before a traditional conflict can begin in the land domain, in the sea and air domain, it is space and cyberspace where the war begins first, in the fourth and fifth dimensions. So it's of a great significance for us to learn and understand China's progress. So this is where I had made a cinematic animated video on China's space warfare attempts against India during Operation Sindoor. How China was actively assisting Pakistan in the middle of Operation Sindoor, how India managed to counter this by disrupting Chinese satellite data links. So if you haven't watched this video, please find this on our YouTube channel, right? Do watch it. It's just a 8-9 minute video, animated cinematic video that gives you a clear picture, a clear understanding of how space warfare was integral in Operation Sindoor as well. How China engaged in space warfare against India, how India managed to deceive and trick the Chinese satellites. But going forward, any Chinese involvement in the space domain against India would not be restricted to just passing intelligence to Pakistan or just carrying out surveillance on India. It would go beyond. It would enter the domain where China would like to deploy offensive capabilities to knock out India's space assets. Now, right now, when you look at China's space ambitions and space warfare ambitions, China is becoming very, very advanced in terms of its space weapon technology. Starting from 2007, over the last 2 decades, China has made significant progress. And today it's in a position to even compete with US with regard to its space weapon capabilities. In 2007, China targeted its own satellite using a kinetic kill weapon, a modified ballistic missile to knock out a target satellite. That was China's first test, first display of its space weapon capabilities. Then in 2015, China tested an exo-atmospheric vehicle striking a hostile target in a test or an experiment that was carried out. In 2022, it even used a robotic spacecraft to knock out a target satellite from its orbit into the graveyard orbit, from where it will deorbit and crash back into Earth, or it will get pushed out into outer space. So this capability can render enemy satellites useless, even without physically destroying them. And more recently, China has even demonstrated orbital dogfight and co-orbital capabilities, where a spacecraft or a satellite can be deployed into the same orbit as the target satellite, and it can either knock it out, disrupt its communication links, or it can physically grab and capture the enemy satellite as well. So such kinetic, non-kinetic weapons are developed. Even US has it, Russia has it, China has it. So this is where the challenge arises. See, China is still many steps behind when compared to the US. China has roughly around 1,900 plus satellite assets in orbit, and at least 400 of them are military grade satellites, which are used for Earth observation, border monitoring, for intelligence gathering, surveillance and reconnaissance. Whereas United States has upwards of 8,000 plus satellites, which a large number of them being the Starlink low Earth orbit satellites from SpaceX of Elon Musk. So US has a dominance in military satellites, in commercial satellites as well. So there is a clear competition between them, and this is what creates a challenge for China. Now, China is significantly accelerating its space program. It has some very crazy ambitions going forward. By 2036, China wants to land on the moon, place astronauts, and it's considering the possibility of a permanent human habitation on the lunar surface. It is also planning a nuclear-powered spacecraft to be launched by 2040, giving it immense shelf life. It's coming up with solar-powered systems to deploy eternal objects in space, in orbit, giving China a lead in orbital dominance. It's competing with American corporate entities like Starlink. If US has Starlink and SpaceX that are dominating the low Earth orbit, there are similar Chinese startups, space startups like Landscape, iSpace, and OneSpace, which have similar plans to deploy thousands and thousands of microsatellites to relay internet and broadband services from the orbit directly. So be it in the military strategic domain or in the commercial domain, China is trying to match the US number to number in terms of the satellites they have in orbit, in terms of capabilities, in terms of the grand vision and ambition. China even has plans someday, probably in the next 30, 40 years, to focus on lunar mining and asteroid mining. Since there is a huge rising demand for critical strategic minerals and there is a limited supply on Earth, as AI technology advances, demand for data centers goes up, demand for clean energy goes up. There will be rising demand for lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper, etc. So one place where you can find them is probably on the lunar surface, on asteroids, etc. So China is reaching out to the cosmos, quite literally, and trying to explore these domains for mining critical minerals and resources. So this is where China would like to establish its dominance, and that creates a strategic challenge for India. So China will not only try to protect its own existing assets of 1,900 satellites in orbit, it will resort to military tactics, coercive tactics, to threaten the enemy, especially during tensions, disputes, wars, or conflict. If there were to be another Galwan like incident, we might see Chinese attempts to target India's space assets. We saw this in the cyber domain. At the same time, when Ladakh crisis was going on in 2020, there were targeted cyber warfare attempts against India's critical infrastructure, where India's port operations were disrupted, power grids were brought down, power plants were targeted. Similar attacks can be seen probably in the space domain as well, going forward, where Indian space assets could be targeted. Now, this is where India is very vulnerable. We hardly have 60 satellites in orbit compared to China's 1,900 plus, right? China has 400 military grade satellites, and we have a very small constellation of satellites performing different duties. Though India has entered the elite club of anti satellite weapon capable countries, we do have a reliable anti-sat weapon that was tested in 2019 under Mission Shakti, where a modified ballistic missile was used to physically destroy a target satellite in orbit. But the challenge is India's technology is still premature, it's still evolving. Whereas China is already in an advanced stage, competing with US and looking to scale up its commercial capabilities as well. So it's competing with US in the military strategic domain and in the commercial domain. And that's where India will face a significant challenge. Right now, India's space capabilities are largely driven by our public or space organization, that is ISRO. Though we have opened up the private space sector and private space startups are also present, the scale and capabilities are still limited when compared to China or US. Now, if you look at the kind of space weapons that China has already deployed and developed, it has focused on kinetic kill options, from modified ballistic missiles to co-orbital satellites, which can physically knock out and destroy an enemy satellite, right? Either they can carry an explosive charge and detonate closer to the target, or they can physically crash into the target satellite, causing the destruction of the target satellite. Or co-orbital satellites are designed even to robotically capture the satellite or knock it out of orbit into the graveyard orbit, or disrupt its communications. China has even developed non-kinetic options where the satellite is not physically destroyed, using laser-based interception, electronic warfare and cyber warfare-based interception of data links, corrupting the communication links, and physically capturing or knocking out the satellite from orbit. These are non-kinetic options. Because see, when it comes to space warfare, one needs to be mindful of the Kessler syndrome. The Kessler syndrome, if it kicks into effect, it can destroy space exploration forever. Since space debris is growing day by day, there is a theory that at some point it will trigger a domino effect, a chain reaction, where the slightest or smallest amount of debris can strike other satellites in orbit, and given the velocity in which they'll be traveling at, it can easily destroy the satellites physically, creating thousands of more debris particles, which in turn can hit multiple other satellites, creating a chain reaction. And within days or hours, you could see that the low Earth orbit could become unusable, that too for a very, very long time to come. So Kessler syndrome refers to that domino reaction which can happen as space debris continues to grow. So there is a lot of global pressure and concern regarding kinetic kill options. Even when India carried out Mission Shakti, we faced a lot of criticism because India physically destroyed the target satellite, resulting in some amount of space debris. So China, if it's under pressure in this regard, with regard to kinetic kill options, it can employ non-kinetic options using laser to blind the satellite, or electronic cyber warfare measures to cripple the data and communication links, or using co-orbital satellites to physically capture the target satellite or knock it out of the orbit. Now, hypothetically, if at all there were to be such a scenario, China would like to target India's military-grade satellites, Cartosat, Risat series of satellites, which provide high-resolution Earth imaging, which has a military application. It could even target our communication satellites to knock out the key services they provide, including banking, finance, etc. So this will be a direct hit on our critical infrastructure, or it can take aim at our ISR capabilities, the Earth observation satellites, which can be placed on the sensitive Himalayan border to track Chinese movements. So China could use laser-based weapons to blind the Indian satellites temporarily instead of permanently physically destroying it. Or it can deploy data jammers and disrupt the GPS signals as well, and to knock out the Navik constellation of satellites, which are already facing a crunch because of repeated launch failures that have occurred with regard to the Navik series of satellites. So this is the real threat that India faces, right? So if China is under pressure of not triggering the Kessler syndrome effect, it has many non-kinetic options through which it can still knock out our space assets, right? So that is where India needs to develop a better counter plan. First of all, ISRO alone cannot be expected to bear the entire burden along with DRDO. It's high time that India expands the space industry further, creating more opportunities for private space companies, at least in the commercial domain. So ISRO DRDO in combination can focus primarily on the military and strategic aspects of space warfare. Then India has generally gone for these mega large satellite programs. Experts believe that era is gone. Today is the era of smaller constellations which are more resilient, which are harder to destroy. Imagine the Starlink constellation, which is said to have eventually 36 to 40,000 satellites, all micro satellites. Very hard to destroy all of them. It will be more resilient to any such attacks. As of now, Elon Musk's company has put up at least around 8,000 satellites in orbit, which itself is a massive number. So China is also heading in this path, focusing on smaller satellites, creating larger constellations. It's like how drones have completely changed the rules of battlefield. Similarly, smaller satellites and constellation of satellites can change the games of or the rules of space warfare. Until now, India's priority has been on large satellite projects, but now the focus should shift towards smaller constellations, which will give you more resilience and survivability. It creates the redundancy. Even if some satellites are taken out, you will have another fleet which can survive. And you need to focus on dual use satellites, which can serve a military purpose while serving a commercial application as well. And India will have to protect its ground based assets, the control centers, the launch centers, which could be potentially targeted in case of a conflict. And we also have to enter into partnership agreements with our close friends and partners, maybe France, maybe Israel, maybe United States, which are willing to share satellite data and intelligence in case our systems are knocked out. Or we should even explore commercial agreements with probably Western satellite companies, which can continue to share high resolution images during a conflict, even if China were to disrupt or target our space assets. So such comprehensive plans are needed, along with establishing strong deterrence by building up our own anti-satellite weapon arsenal. According to reports, India is also looking to expand its kinetic and non-kinetic kill options. We are looking at directed energy weapon systems, which are laser based. We have already proven and tested a ballistic missile. We are looking at co-orbital satellites, which can knock out the target satellite or capture it or dislodge it. So such options are being considered and developed, and it's high time to accelerate this satellite space program to ensure that India can deter and counter the advances that China has been making. This becomes an essential step in today's warfare to protect your space assets, because this is what will be targeted in the first round of strikes before the actual war can begin. Next, a quick update on the Iran war. Iran has said that ongoing peace talks with US have been suspended. This came as a shocking development. Iran has accused Israel of repeatedly violating the ceasefire, continuing to attack Lebanon, especially Beirut, and key neighborhoods like Dahia neighborhood, which is on the suburbs of Beirut, which is a hub of Hezbollah commanders. Then southern Lebanon, as we discussed yesterday as well, has been repeatedly hit by Israeli defense forces. Now, Iran expects Israel to abide by the ceasefire, and as per Iran's interpretation of the ceasefire, Israel and US were supposed to stop the fighting at all fronts, not just against Iran, but against all the fronts that were opened in the region, be it against Yemen, against the Houthis, or against Hamas, or against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran wanted all the fronts to be brought to a ceasefire, but Israel has continued its violations, carrying out massive attacks. And in last few days, attacks in Lebanon have gone up, and Israeli defense forces have captured significant territory as well in southern Lebanon. Apart from that, fresh clashes broke out between US and Iran. Reportedly, Iran shot down a US drone that was carrying out surveillance. US retaliated, targeting radar sites and air defense sites, which were essentially located near Bandar Abbas. So these skirmishes, which have broken out, along with Israel's repeated violations in Lebanon, has pushed Iran to suspend the ongoing talks. But on the other hand, Trump has claimed that the talks have not been suspended. So this creates a lot of uncertainty over the peace process itself. So let's wait and watch with regard to the further developments. Now, coming to the prelim section, we have a few small articles in the Hindu and as well as some topics from PIB. On the front page, we have this article related to the new series of IIP, the Index of Industrial Production, which has been brought out. So this follows the new economic series, which has been brought out similarly for GDP, for CPI, retail inflation, where the base year has been changed. The methodology and the data which is being captured has been more refined to present a more accurate picture of the Indian economy. So after the new GDP series and CPI series, the government has rolled out the new IIP series with the updated base year. The old base year was 2011-12, but now the base year has been updated to 2022-23. And it's not just the base year, even the number of sectors covered has been expanded. For example, apart from the traditional sectors like mining, manufacturing, and electricity, it has included even water supply, gas supply, sewage, waste management, and also the data captured for various products and services is at a granular level that gives a more accurate picture of the macroeconomic development that's happening. So as per the new IIP index, the growth in industrial sector has slightly slowed to around 4.9% in the month of April. Same month in previous year, it was at 5.8%, but of course, you have to keep the base effect in mind. So these changes done to IIP will better reflect industrial activity and industrial growth. So if you want a detailed understanding on the topic, Sham sir has yesterday done a detailed video. It's available on the channel. So do watch this to further understand the changes done to IIP. Next, on page 12, a topic related to security. Operation Mule Hunt, a cyber security operation led by Gujarat Police and its Cyber Center of Excellence. In this operation, the Gujarat Police have targeted cyber scamsters and money laundering networks that were involved in funneling the loot of cyber scandals into foreign jurisdictions, where mule accounts are primarily relied upon. So that's why this cyber operation was codenamed Operation Mule Hunt. So this is an opportunity for you to understand what's a mule account, how is it used for money laundering. See, in a mule account, the cyber criminal cartels or any organized criminal cartel, since they would like to conceal their transactions, they would make use of third-party accounts opened in someone else's name with someone else's KYC documents. Generally, these individuals whose accounts are used for making these transactions, those individuals would be innocent. They would not even be aware that their accounts are being misused for criminal activities, for moving criminal proceeds. Usually, they might get some commission as well. So once a third-party account is made available to the criminal cartels, they will place the money usually in smaller fractions in a technique called smurfing, where they break up the large amount into small portions and move it through mule accounts and conduct complex series of transactions to move the money out of India. So such fake accounts which are employed, the third-party accounts that are used, right, which can't be easily traced back to the criminal cartels themselves, they are referred to as mule accounts. Even the Home Ministry, along with Enforcement Directorate, has been launching a campaign with RBI and the banks in the country to trace those mule accounts, which are mainly used for moving the proceeds of crime and launder the money into foreign jurisdictions. Next, on page 12, there's an article related to the BRICS cultural working group meetings that India is hosting. See, right now, India is holding the chair position of BRICS, will be hosting the BRICS summit in September. In the run up to the summit, India is also chairing the cultural working committee meetings. Now, given the granular level at which UPSC has been asking some questions on organizations, it's better you focus on these kind of topics as well. So, India will be hosting a series of meetings and conclaves focused on cultural cooperation, people to people relations amongst the BRICS nations. The same article is further explained in this PIB press release as well, because the Hindu article just makes a mention of the topic. It doesn't give you the finer details. The first summit that took place a few weeks back, it was a virtual summit that was held. But the second conference, which is happening in Varanasi, right, it would be a physical meet where all the BRICS nations, along with the new partner countries that have joined, will all participate to focus on cultural ties and people to people relations. So these cultural working conferences that are being held, there is a thematic priority which has been identified. Three major thematic priorities. One is creative economy, cultural and creative industries, copyright, and artificial intelligence. How ethical AI can be used to protect culture, to restore cultural heritage, or bring back cultural property which has been stolen. Even the return of cultural property and the linkage with climate and sustainable development. These three thematic priorities have been identified. So if you look at the BRICS summit that we are planning to host in September, the theme aligns with what you see at the culture working group discussions. The overall theme of the BRICS summit is building for resilience, innovation, cooperation, and sustainability. So in the vision, in line with focus on sustainability and innovation, the goal is to bring in AI and the concept of sustainability into cultural protection and cultural propagation to revive the cultural links between the BRICS nations. So in this regard, India has been hosting these events as part of the BRICS cultural working group meetings. So there's a series of meetings lined up. The first one has taken place in virtual mode. The second will be hosted in a few days in Varanasi. And the next three meetings, including the BRICS Cultural Festival and Culture Ministers meeting, all the culture ministers of the BRICS members and partner countries will participate. And these events will happen in Bhopal. And finally, there will be a BRICS Theatre Festival in New Delhi. So also please note that in 2025, BRICS added a new member in the form of Indonesia. And along with that, 10 new partner countries also have joined the organization. And some of them are in line for membership. So all these nations would be participating. The 21 countries would be taking part in these cultural working group meetings. Next, a small article on page 12 and a detailed article is also present on PIB. This is related to a deal between ISRO, a memorandum of agreement that was signed with Ministry of Jal Shakti. It's a new initiative focused on water management, water conservation by using space assets and using technological tools. So the Ministry of Jal Shakti has rolled out the MAHA initiative on water. It stands for Mission for Advancement in High Impact Areas for Water. So under the MAHA initiative for water, the focus is on using ISRO's space assets for better water conservation, promote water sustainability, and deal with the impact of climate change. Parallelly, the ministry has launched a competition amongst private startups in the field of water conservation. It's called Bharat Win Innovation Network or Bharat Water Innovation Network that encourages Indian startups to come out with water conservation ideas and strategies. Then a portal, an online portal has been launched, Catch the Rain portal. This builds on the success of the government's initiative, Jal Sanchai Jan Bhagidari initiative, which is a community-led initiative focusing on water conservation efforts. So this is now being brought in a digital format to spread more awareness about water sustainability and conservation and drive community-led efforts. So as part of this MOU with ISRO, ISRO's space assets will be used for mapping water resources in the country, to track water levels in our reservoirs, even to estimate water quality from space. So all these initiatives are part of the MAHA initiative on water. Coming to the last topic, a PIB article on Project Udayak. It's a road development project, a strategic road development project led by Border Roads Organization. The BRO was marking its 37th raising day in Assam, and it also marks the success of Project Udayak, where strategic roads have been built in Arunachal Pradesh and parts of Assam, where we share borders with China and Myanmar. So around 1,457-kilometer network of roads have been built in the key areas that border the McMahon line, and as well as the borders with Myanmar. So BRO has also been taking up the fencing project along the India-Myanmar border, where the Ministry of Home Affairs is working with the Defense Ministry to strengthen border security and border management and check infiltration and flow of refugees. So all these initiatives taken up along the China border and Myanmar border in Arunachal Pradesh and some parts of Assam is led under Project Udayak. Specifically in Lohit, Dibang Valley, Tirap, and other districts that adjoin the sensitive borders with China and Myanmar. So just remember the name of the project, the purpose, and which areas the project has focused upon. So on this note, we bring the discussion to an end. If you like the session, do press the like button. If you benefited, do share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.